All right, Richie, let's talk a little recruiting. Florida State's been on a little bit of a hot streak. We also have had some frustrations. We've had some disappointments. I don't know what the best way to say certain things is, but yeah, I think that we are mostly happy with how things are going. Florida State right now has climbed really over the last 10 days from like a class ranked around 70th up to 25th on 247. They're currently number 9 in On3's industry rankings, which certainly values more the quality than the quantity. Actually, I really like the way that On3 does theirs. They don't count the full class until more programs have more players committed. So like in June, you only having 10 guys committed doesn't hurt you because they're only taking the top 10 of everybody's recruits. And in September, they're only taking the top 15, give or take. And then obviously when you get to December, they're counting the full class. But I do like the way that On3 does that. Just having a smaller class doesn't kill you in June and isn't really, Florida State at 70 when they've got all blue chip recruits that, isn't maybe the most accurate way to do it, but to each their own. So anyway, Florida State seems to be recruiting at a much better level. We'll talk about some of the woes in just a minute, but this may change this week, but Florida State, 10 for 10 on blue chip prospects, according to the 247 composite. Richie, they're the only team in the country that has a 100% blue chip ratio. That's not going to last forever. They are going to take a 3-star or 2 in this class. But they're the first team out of the blue chip ratio right now that, CBS Sports and Bud puts together that could possibly win a championship. If they go 10 for 10 and then continue to add to that, they're certainly going to be in it again next year. So what Norvell is doing right now is I don't want to call it spectacular, but I mean, it's pretty good. It continues to trend up and trend in the right way.
Yeah, we think about his mantra, right? Climb. And that's certainly what it's been from going 3-6 his first year, begging just 4-star recruits to get on campus, now to being very selective, and Mike Norvell, if he wanted to right now, he could have this high school class filled. But again, he's going to be very selective on who he lets in, especially this early. And I don't think you're going to see him take many, late quote unquote fillers either, because the transfer portal has changed the game. And Mike Norvell is kind of the first guy who really jumped on board and said, yeah, I can use this. Now, he did it out of necessity, because he probably, if there was no transfer portal, Mike Norvell probably is not Florida State's head coach right now. He probably would have been fired just because he would not have been able to bring in the talent that he did. Jermaine Johnson, being the first guy I think of, how early he brought him in from Georgia. But yeah, I think the fact that he can be more selective right now, and what I love about Mike Norvell and what he's showing, if he does take a 3-star, it's someone that he truly believes the industry just missed the ranking on. Right. 247 On3, ESPN, the rankings are terrible, but I'll throw them in there. You just start thinking about, there are kids that these guys miss on, that the coaches might be going to a high school game to watch one player and another player just stands out to them. And he's like, hold on, let me go watch his film. And he brings him in. And I just think, Mike Norvell probably will never sign the number 1 class in the country, but I do trust his recruiting wholeheartedly right now.
Yeah, and I also think that it speaks, and this, I mean, honestly, this kind of stinks for, some of the high school prospects because everybody just ends up getting bumped down a level. And, especially with the COVID year and stuff, which should be pretty close to gone at this point. But you think about, instead of taking a lot of those developmental guys and taking those low 3 stars, mid 3 stars, guys that, are going to be kind of a project, and it's not calling anybody out or trying to be like insensitive. Instead of taking those guys, I think the whole philosophy has changed. And so now you're looking at, hey, we'll take the quality over the quantity. And then instead of those developmental guys, man, we'll go hit the portal. And Florida State has continued to prove they can do that at a really elite level. And so why, now that stinks for some of those 3-star guys that were used to getting developed by Florida State and then maybe transferring on somewhere else when the writing was on the wall that they weren't going to be able to cut it at this level. But I mean, it certainly is better for the program and certainly is better long-term for what your roster is going to look like.
Yeah. And I think that's what you're going to have to continue to do in this day and age of college football. And to your point, TJ, it really sucks for some of these high school players who, maybe they are a 4-star talent, but with a 3-star ranking, but a coach might be hesitant on them. Even Jimbo Fisher, when he was signing top 5 classes every single year on National Signing Day, back when it was only in February, he'd always add 2 to 3 kind of unheard of players that, unless you were a diehard recruitnik, you didn't know who they were. And it was simply because we have these scholarships, we got to fill them, and there was no portal. So that's kind of what signing day used to be. And we don't have those kind of surprise, out of nowhere commits anymore on signing day just because of the portal. And it really sucks for some of these high school kids that, maybe on the fringe of having an opportunity to play for a Power 5 or P2, whatever it's going to be in the next few years. But that's kind of where we are. But I think it's a more sure way to build the program. If you can say, hey, I've seen his film in college versus this guy's film playing really low competition in high school, even if that high school guy might be a stud, you're going to trust the guy with college tape more. And, that's just where we are.
So Florida State has been on a little bit of a tear. Just quickly running through some recent commits. Peyton Joseph, 4-star offensive lineman that Florida State really, really likes. Interior kid, was at one time committed to Florida. Took a couple of visits to Florida State and then quickly decommitted from there. It saw the light. Saw him trolling on Twitter a little bit, which shout out to that. I'm for it. Once you get to college, man, you can let that stuff go. But yeah, that kid is a kid after my own heart for sure. Richie, the coolest commitment I've ever seen, I think.
Yes.
We're
I know where you're going.
Moment. Such prisoners of the moment. But probably the coolest commitment I've ever seen was what Zay Thomas did. And so that happened Monday or Sunday night after we'd already recorded. We kind of alluded to it in last week's recording, but didn't outright say that was going to happen. Well, it did happen. And the way that Zay Thomas committed at the Hard Rock with the Seminole head going up on the guitar, down there, just, a stone's throw away from Miami and Hard Rock and everything else like that. That was really, really cool. Even if it wasn't like down in Miami, that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It looked, just the Hard Rock is nice here in Tampa. The one out in Miami is phenomenal. And you saw kind of like that setting that he was at near the pool. Like it was so, so cool. And, I've seen the live, Baby Gator, when UF kid, that's pretty cool to me. Like whatever. This was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like this was so dope. And, got this week started off right. Florida State's week, went downhill after that, but Zay Thomas's commitment was really cool. We will get right back to it, but first I wanted to give a little bit of love to the Mango Board. I've told you about them for several episodes now. We've talked about them a ton, and at this point, I just want to tell you, they are going to be out at a ton of events this year with Florida State. They'll be at the BC game. I know they'll be at some soccer stuff. I know they're doing some stuff with some other sports in the spring as well, and then other football games that happen as well. Make sure that you go by there and say hi. They're not going to be selling you anything. They're not going to get you to buy anything. They may have some samples. They may have some giveaways, some free swag. If you see them, go tell them hi. Tell them you saw this on Double Fries No Slaw. And then the next time you're at your local grocer, grab you a mango or two. You won't be upset after you did. It's physically impossible to be in a bad mood while you're cutting up or eating a mango or enjoying any kind of mango dessert or salsa or whatever you're getting. So we appreciate the Mango Board for their support of not only our channel, but FSU Athletics. And again, make sure that you're supporting the people who support not only Double Fries No Slaw, but Florida State Seminole Athletics. Appreciate the Mango Board for all that they do for us.
And just him being a member of the Seminole tribe of Florida, and to do that at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Miami's backyard, just really cool. The only thing I could think of off the top of my head is when Kalen DeBoer showed up to, I think it was a rivals camp in Oregon in a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
His nickname was Lambo. He shows up in a Lamborghini, hops out waving the Florida State flag. But this one was just awesome. Like the fact that, he clearly had the connections. I'm sure they loved that he was a member of the Seminole tribe of Florida. I doubt any random high school kid could call them up and say, hey, this is how I want to make my commitment. But for him doing it that way was just so cool, to your point. Like you said, the live alligator, as much as we hate UF, yeah, that's cool. Probably the cutest thing is when, a kid commits to UGA and has a puppy English bulldog with him or something. But, that was definitely one of the most creative ways I've ever seen a kid commit. And it was the fact that it was to Florida State, the school that we cheer for every single Saturday in the fall, that made it even that much better.
So before that, they landed Chase Lofton, Myron Charles, C.J. Wiley, and Kevin Wynn. A good run there the week prior. The bad news, or what we won't avoid is, man, they struck out at linebacker and struck out really bad. They do have Pritchard committed, who I think is a solid piece. I think Pritchard's a little bit of a developmental piece. I don't know that he's like day one ready or anything like that, but they missed on some pretty big targets. Quickly, Randy Sale obviously stuck with Washington after privately committing to the staff, and we had a pre-record ready to go on that. We kind of had been, we actually recorded it several days before after being told that he committed to the staff. Obviously, that went to waste. Gavin Nix, it felt like you were never super involved there. I think that Miami did a really good job with that recruitment, and that was just one they led on and finished on. You probably finished second for what that's worth. So maybe if there's coaching turnover or something like that at Miami, which I don't really anticipate this year, maybe you could get back in there. And then Tavion Wallace was kind of the shocker. The kid commits to Arizona after naming you his publicly his leader, 6-7 days before. And so that was kind of the gut punch. It felt
Arkansas.
like, well, you missed on the first two. Did I say Arkansas?
You said Arizona, Arkansas,
yeah.
right?
Arizona might even be better. But commits to Arkansas. That was the gut punch for sure. And so linebacker recruiting, again, certainly not great. I won't belabor the point. I'll let Richie talk about it, and then we can kind of move on, since I did a 20-minute rant about it and took all my frustrations out the morning after Tavion committed. But yeah, just not really great. Hopefully they can kind of stay in it for Wallace, and I expect there to be coaching turnover at Arkansas this year. That probably makes the fact that he committed there even worse. But nonetheless, I hope that's somewhere we can pick up. I'm really impressed with how Florida State's recruiting at a lot of positions. I don't think they're necessarily elite at every single position, but I think they're doing a pretty good job this cycle. Linebacker does seem to be the struggle. But again, I went on a 20-minute rant about that a week ago. So, Richie, I'll let you talk, and then we'll move on from it.
Yeah, it felt like, for that stretch, especially after we got Zay Thomas Monday or Sunday night, that we're just going to land everybody, right? It felt like, all right, anyone who's announcing and Florida State has a hat on the table, we're getting them. And then we kind of, college football is a very humbling sport. You can go from the top to the bottom real quick. Recruiting is no different. The linebacker recruiting has been very disappointing, and it makes me wonder, is it Randy? We know he's not a great recruiter, which is weird because when he was at Miami as their head coach, he was a very good recruiter. He signed the number one class in the country. Granted, half that class seemed to be Miami Northwestern players, but it's just not happening right now. But it's probably deeper than that. And, Florida State, we run two linebackers on the field pretty much every play, unless you get into a goal line set. So in the era of where we are right now, it's, what are your priorities? It makes me wonder. I think linebackers should probably be more of a priority. I don't know if it is or isn't, but it's just not where we want. And, one thing that's been said is Randy typically has a very short or small board at his position instead of casting a little bit of a wider net. That's one thing that I would blame him on, that I'd like to see him change is, okay, we're not going to get all of our top targets. Even Arkansas, it's a gut punch to lose a kid that you really, really, really wanted to Arkansas. But in the name, image, and likeness era, that's not, unexpected entirely anymore. It's the SEC schools, they have money. You know who might steal a kid from us that we really want is a school like SMU, who has just an unlimited booster donation base. I'm not saying that's all it was, because I don't really know. I didn't follow his recruitment super closely. But again, losing a guy to Arkansas, that's unacceptable to some extent. But we're still in June. The pen has not hit paper yet. I think we're going to remain active. I expect him to visit Florida State at least one more time. And we'll kind of see what happens from there. But yeah, as great as the week before was, and here's my question: would you rather get CJ, which was a pretty big shocker as a commitment, or lose Tavion, which we did? I almost rather have CJ, especially in Mike Norvell's program.
Yeah, I'd take he's probably if he signs, right? And so you have to
Correct.
kind of caveat everything with recruiting now. He's probably the best, what I've been told. I think he's going to be the best wide receiver we've gotten out of Georgia in a long, long time, like really long. And so, yeah, I would probably lean the yeah, they're ranked similarly. I'd probably lean the elite wide receiver over the elite linebacker.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I just always would, right? Like,
Offense is more
unless you're
important. You know, defense
unless
is
you're
also
talking like
important right
Sammy
now.
Brown or something like, but even then I'd take, comparable to him would be Jeremiah. So yeah, I'd take the wide receiver all times, but yeah, something that you want to see get better, kid names you as leader 3 times. He did it once in January, he did it once in May, and then he did it once here again in June. You'd hope that you could finish that and close that. And I don't know, maybe the staff got played, maybe they got trolled a little bit. It certainly seemed like, for him to name you his leader 6 days before and on the same show have a pre-record done announcing Arkansas when nobody else could really get a hold of him the last day. It seemed like he was trying to set up for the dramatics there. And again, I don't think setting up for the dramatics is like trolling or playing the staff, but I don't know. It kind of feels like that a little bit. So I do think the staff is still in. We do get trolled. Listen, I'm not trying to be negative, but
Yeah.
we do get trolled. So we get trolled an elite amount for
Real quick,
this program.
Did we miss something? Because I saw that, and I didn't know this until after he committed to Arkansas, but on his official visit to Arkansas, that's the day that he changed his commitment date. So maybe the signs were there and we all just missed it.
Yeah, I mean, his commitment date originally was like way off out, and so he moved his commitment date. Like, okay, so looking back, yes, right. Like I'll just
Hindsight, yeah.
But the reason they didn't think that was, number one, Arkansas wasn't thought to be a player. Number two, he had just named you his leader right before that Arkansas visit. So Arkansas was his first official visit, and going into his official visits, he said Florida State's my leader, and then he moved his date just right after his official visit to FSU. So yes, he did it while on that Arkansas visit, but also he was moving it very close to his official visit at Florida State. And so I think Florida State actually felt good about that because Arkansas wasn't seen as a legitimate contender in this thing. And so looking back, certainly when it happened, those are the reasons why they didn't really think much about it. And nobody else did either. Nobody else was like, oh man, what if Arkansas the player, like, it was like, oh yeah, like he's moving it right next to when he's taking his FSU official. All right, we're locking it up. That's done. Which is how everybody else that's committed this last week has done it. Like they all committed like within like 8 days of their officials. Yeah. Like, it's kind of the way you want them to commit right after visiting your school.
And we know that Florida and Florida State staff did not even think Arkansas was an actual player.
Georgia didn't either. Georgia folks are saying FSU. Yeah. He also deleted everything. I mean, I do think he trolled a little bit. He deleted all of his stuff off Instagram except for FSU pics. Like he wanted the dramatics, and that's fine, right? Like kids,
you can't hate
that
TJ. You can't hate anyone who trolls. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. I think that's what happened.
Ground him.
I think that's what that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he got done. Florida State probably not done by any stretch of the imagination. This week, you could always have a surprise or two, but I think they're in a really good spot to land Max Redmond, defensive back out of West Palm Beach. I think that he announces on Tuesday. Hopefully it's like an afternoon, evening thing. I hate like the morning stuff, but Max Redmond, I think Florida State's in a really good position there to land another commit. Might be their first 3-star of the year if they're able to land him. Hot take, though, or spoiler alert, one way or the other, I think he rises on the rankings. I don't know if he finishes a 4, but I do think he has a pretty significant rise in the rankings. So Florida State not done yet. They'll have more throughout July, and then got some stuff lined up for August as well.